right, folks. Good evening. Professor Finn here, everyone's favorite funeral service educator and homeless mall Santa. Decidedly less homeless now that I have trimmed down the beard a little bit, although I do get some, like, I would say 5 o'clock shadow, but it's more like 11 o'clock shadow. I probably need to shave tomorrow. Let's get things set up a little bit here. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about, go over, etc. So hope everyone is doing well. Pull up the chat over here. Take a quick look at the statistics. Doesn't look like I am dropping a whole lot of frames. That is a good sign. And I'm gonna pull chat out. Drag it over here. There we go. Drop this down here. Alrighty. So first things up, let me just get to the share screen, make sure this thing is positioned right. That looks good. I think it is about time to wipe and completely reset my iMac every time I log into what I use to stream. The webcam's always twisted. Every time I close it, it crashes. So I think it's about time for the good old wipe it and start from scratch. First couple things up, let's check out some interesting tidbits in news here. Let me close a couple of these windows. Blink, drag this over here. Close that. So I have not really paid close attention to the world for about the last month, but there are some things of note that we should be taking a peek at over here. And the first one up, by the way, folks, if no one can hear me, please drop something in the chat, because every so often, like I said, some screwy stuff is happening with what I use to stream. I use OBS Studio to stream, and something's just been janky. So let's take a look at some news real quick. First up, we have the Colorado House approves bill to regulate funeral industry. Tremendous shout out to Professor Faith Haug at, oh my God. I can't believe I'm losing my mind here. Not Arapaho. Dude, I'm literally losing my mind. Faith is gonna kick my ass. Oh God. Is it Arapaho? God, I am so losing my mind. Yeah, it is Arapaho. God, I don't know why I'm doubting myself. Dude, don't get old. No one get old. It gets really bad when you get old. But tremendous shout out to Professor Haug. She was a large portion of interacting with the Colorado legislatures and other people that were involved in this. Her and her wife do some wonderful stuff in the community. If you're out in that neck of the woods, you're looking for a good garage. Let me tell you what, you probably wouldn't be too hurt or better served by going somewhere else. Wife is a mechanic and a very talented one from which I understand. So the bill to put Colorado's funeral home operators under state regulation for the first time in 40 years won near unanimous approval from the House Wednesday. And this was a while ago. Senate Bill 173 requires licensing for funeral directors, mortuary science practitioners, embalmers, cremationists, and natural reductionists. The licensing requirements are steep. What I find interesting about this is that they are creating these different categories for all of these individuals. Realistically, I don't know that I would want a cremationist, or at least people meeting with families, who are not licensed. But I assume this is probably they want to go ahead and they want to regulate people that are operating the crematory, so the employees that are doing the cremations make sure that they're doing they're following either minimum state laws or industry best practices, something like that. And the same thing probably goes for natural reductionists. Licensed funeral director meets with a client family, and then whoever is performing these other acts, they're probably going to have additional certifications or at least know that they're doing these things. So no one can just kind of hang a shingle and say, hey, by the way, I'm not really a funeral director, but if you want me to bury grandma out back and put some potted plants on top of her, we can do that. The bill says prospective funeral industry professional must apply, pay an application fee, pass a criminal history check, and not be subject to discipline in another state. These regulations go into effect January 1st, 2027. I think maybe next time, make a little note here, I will dig out that law. We'll take a peek at it. We'll kind of tear it apart, see what they did, what they didn't do, what the pounds of flesh they gave certain industries might have been. So let's look at Colorado proposed laws. If I don't do that with the Fridays with Finn, I will most certainly do that with a commentary video. On the proposed funeral dress must mortuary science practitioner. I wonder what a mortuary science practitioner is. I wonder if they just like kind of sit around in like a pentagram and chant words backwards. And embalmers must graduate from an approved mortuary science school and serve a 1-year apprenticeship. Funeral directors must pass the arts section. Okay, so they're separating. They're gonna do what some states do, which is there's a funeral director license, there's an embalmer's license, and there's probably going to be a concurrent license where you can do both. Funeral directors have to pass the arts, the national board. Others must pass the arts. So a mortuary science practitioner must pass the arts and sciences section. So that's the combination funeral director embalmer license that many states have and is the standard in some states. And embalmers must pass the science section. It'll be interesting to see if they include options for passing alternative exams, because there are some states that are creating alternative exams, and how they will look at individuals who have licenses already. Natural reductionists specializing in composting human remains, a practice authorized in Colorado in 2021, must receive official certification from one of several organizations in the cremation industry. Well, that's interesting that natural reduction would have to get approval from a cremation organization. But, hey, I'm just going to sit here and drink my tea. That's none of my business. The bill dictates the current practitioner must obtain a provisional license, a requirement that goes into effect with the governor's signature. That's probably a good idea. You get a provisional license so they hash out all the rest of it. So they know that you exist and what you're doing. And then in a couple of years, 2027, got to make sure that you have the full thing or you're done. To qualify for the provisional license, the applicant can't have a disqualifying criminal record. That sounds vague. Must pass a background check, have at least a year of workplace experience as a funeral director, mortuary science practitioner, embalmer, cremationist, or natural reductionist, and 4,000 hours of equivalent experience obtained no later than January 2026. Okay. That seems like a little bit much, but okay. Let's see here. You know what? I don't have my phone, or else I was gonna just kind of compute, how many weeks, days that 4,000 hours is. I'm too damn lazy. The bill also adds a process for renewal, which includes 6 hours of continuing ed. Continuing ed is good, including classes on law, ethics, and public health requirements. A series of scandals involving funeral homes led to this year's legislation. Yeah, proven you. The funeral. I hate to say it, but the funeral industry has proven time and time again since I don't know, the 1800s, that it is incapable of regulating itself because people make crappy decisions, which is unfortunate because this should be a noble profession where people don't do crappy things like this. In Penrose, a couple operating the Return to Nature funeral home, Return to Nature, all right, where the license had expired and facing federal charges related to 189 bodies left to decompose. In Denver, the remains of 30 people, plus the body of a woman left in a hearse for 2 years. Ooh, I must have missed that one. Are tied to another operator whose license had also expired. A mother and daughter in Montrose owned a funeral home, of both serving time in federal prison for selling body parts. Yeah, and that's also, I think on one of our live streams, we also dived in. We looked at someone that was selling body parts out of New Hampshire, Massachusetts area, and they're going to get spanked. We don't want to be trafficking that stuff. I mean, period, you don't want to be trafficking it, but if you're going to traffic it, you might just want to do it within the, the confines of your own state, because the moment you cross those state lines, you get to be a resident of a federal penitentiary, the sweetest smelling penitentiaries in the United States. The House on Tuesday amended the bill to provide another path forward for those who've been in the industry for a long time, which makes sense. Under the amendment, instead of taking a national exam, a practitioner can be peer-reviewed by another practitioner willing to attest to the Department of Regulatory Agencies that the individual is qualified and has the appropriate workplace learning experience. I love the idea that you can have SpongeBob and Squidward just kind of approving each other. Brilliant idea. I mean, it's better than nothing. I've given some grief, but it really is better than nothing. And over a period of time, that's going to go away. This is the one-time shot for people that are doing a good job and really assets to their community, being able to continue to serve in that capacity because the state has not required licenses in the past. That experience would include at least 25 funerals or 25 embalments. Man, that's a pretty small number, but I can probably imagine there are some, small funeral homes there in Colorado, probably do 50 calls every 2 years. That they're going to want something small to fit those people in. The peer review person must be approved by DOR and must be employed in the same area of the profession. Soper said the amendment was suggested by Arapahoe Community College, which offers the only accredited mortuary degree in the state. Again, shout out to Professor Haug. And now is going to go back into the process for amendments and typical politicking. But this is a step in the right direction. Really, this industry cannot exist without regulation. I think as a whole, humanity cannot exist without some level of regulation from some type of governmental body. And really, that's where, in the modern political spectrum, people start to deviate, right? There are some people who want really heavy government regulation, that they're going to be controlled, and it's the government's fault why people suck. And that's why the government needs to do more to control how people, people basically suck less. There are people who are like, yeah, no, I really don't want the government telling me what to say, what to do, and all the rest of this crap. And let's not even talk about social credit scores. And then there are people who are just absolutely government bad. Nope, that's a nope. Just going to stay in my land, drink my shine. And I think the happy medium is somewhere in the middle, that we do have, reasonable government intervention in our lives for the benefit of all citizens, and not just, hey, we're going to tell you what to think. Found an interesting thing the other night. This is a thing, believe it or not. Feel free to jump on YouTube. Chinese death vans. That's a thing in China. So if you are one of these people that is a chronic pain in the ass, if you are a prisoner of the state that is on death row, which China literally kills more people with their death penalty than all other nations with a death penalty combined on an annual stage. This was part of the video I watched yesterday. If the numbers to be true, China kills like 8,000 people a year. To put this in perspective, maybe the United States kills anywhere between like 15 and 25 in an entire year. China is not just saying hold my beer, they're saying hold my beer-filled tanker truck, and just wiping people off the face of the earth. And the way they do this is pretty ingenious. They don't have execution facilities. They literally just put them in cars. And they drive the car to wherever it's going to go. They load the person in. They kill them. They drive to the location to take the body out. And I even saw a picture where they have a small cremation unit installed in a car as well. And what's really creepy is the video I was watching kind of paints this as a good thing. With no facility, doesn't really cost the state a whole lot of money, costs only about $100,000 to create one of these death cars, and it can be used for years and years and years. Everything is inside. Here's the process. And then it goes into the absolute mental conditioning that you would expect from a state like China, where this is what will happen to you, basically, if you are a bad person. The use of language was pretty interesting. If y'all are interested, when I pull up the chat here in a second, I'll try to find that video for you, and I can dump it online. But it was pretty crazy. Like, it was absolutely nuts. But unsurprising. I mean, the Chinese innovate lots of things. Why not innovate executions of human beings? I suppose everyone at some point has to have a hobby. The second cool thing I want to point out is Erin Wilson is appointed as the 1st female president of the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service. Erin was the former dean of that institute and succeeds me as president, thus creating history. So she's the first female president. She has been installed now for well over a month, I believe. So there is a press release here at funeralvision.com. It was sent out to other avenues. I wouldn't be surprised if it starts popping up in your NOMA's Yellow Pages and places like that. In a historic move, Dallas Institute of Funeral Service has appointed Erin M. Wilson as its first female president in its 115-year history. This appointment not only marks a significant milestone for the college, but also serves as a poignant reflection of the evolving landscape within the funeral service profession and academia. I was privileged to be present at the commencement ceremonies for the Dallas Institute at the beginning of the month of May. And the gentleman giving the keynote talked about the change of the landscape, and I hear a lot about the change in the landscape in funeral service. There are some people out there that do believe that, it's absolutely not happening, but the reality is in most areas, and certainly most major metropolitan areas, women are outnumbering men in funeral service. They're outnumbering them in mortuary school, so it's only a matter of time before it starts trickling down to some of these more pocketed areas where that is not taking effect. Wilson's journey to the presidency is a testament to her multifaceted background, which seamlessly integrates both funeral service and academia. She is a graduate of the Institute herself and brings a wealth of experience and deep-rooted passion for both fields to her new role. As a licensed funeral director and embalmer, Wilson's expertise in the funeral service profession is undeniable. However, her journey has been far from conventional. Prior to entering the funeral service profession, she pursued a career in education. It was after her time in mortuary college that she discovered a way to merge her two passions, ultimately leading her back to the realm of academia. She holds a Master of Science in Human Relations and Business, a Master's Certification in Executive Leadership, and is a certified funeral service professional. Shout out to the Academy of Professional Funeral Service Practice. Her commitment to excellence and innovation has been evident throughout her career. She began teaching in Dallas. She began teaching for the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service in 2019 while maintaining an active role within the profession. Her dedication and expertise saw her rise through the ranks, culminating in her appointment as the academic dean in 2021 and additionally as the program director at the end of 2022. Under her leadership, the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service has experienced significant growth and improvement. That is absolutely a true statement. I attribute a lot of the growth of Dallas Institute since 2021 when she was appointed as dean to her role as dean and her control of academics and instituting high levels of quality across the board there. I think she's been one of their most significant leaders at the Institute. With a focus on enhancing program quality and student success, she's led a team that has achieved notable advancements in student retention, graduation rates, and national board exam scores. Absolutely. Congratulations to her. I'm proud to know her. I'm proud of what she's accomplished there, and I'm proud to see that she's being recognized for all that hard work. All right, let me dive into chat real quick. What do we got going on here? Angela. 166 days. So that's about 6 months. Okay. So good to see you. Thank you. I'll be talking more about that here in a little bit. Chandra, good evening. Nice to see you. And I'm sure we'll have a couple of others diving on. We're only 20 minutes into the live stream. So what is some upcoming important things? Let's get back to full screen here. There's the transition button. So a couple of things that I'm going to be happy to announce is the first thing is I have started a Discord server. So I'm going to drop the Discord channel in the chat. This is going to tie into a couple of other initiatives. I want a place where if I post something, I got to be honest, I really don't want to go back on X / Twitter. Talking about annoying, everyone's going to say X, formerly known as Twitter. Dude, it's X now. Let's just call it X and be done with it. One, I don't really think I'm going to reinstate an account on X. Discord is just fine. I can post up there. I can interact with people easier. I really don't want to get into twit wars. So I'd rather just post it on Discord. And if it turns out to be a hot mess, then I'm probably going to I'm probably going to dive off of that. But there's a couple of things I want to be doing with Discord, or a couple of things I want to be doing in Discord kind of fits that niche. So the first thing is, over the next month or so, I am going to I'm going to be doing an extra thing on Friday. So we obviously have Fridays with Finn, which is the time that you folks can come in and interact with me, and we talk about news, we talk about study habits, we talk about subject matter. Surprisingly, I get a lot of people who ask me questions, like direct questions, in email at the askbigbadfin@gmail.com that really aren't worth talking about on the live stream. And when someone sends me something like that, I tend to want to respond very quickly, because usually if you're asking me something, it's probably because you're in a class, you want to get that information, and you want to you want to get good quick. And waiting for a month to get onto a live stream is kind of not conducive to that. So I want to create some other avenues, some other fun things. I want to kind of work on this streaming social media personality stuff. So the first thing is I'm going to be launching something called Movies with Finn. And all of this is pretty much going to happen on Friday nights. So one of the things that I really like to play with when my time permits is I love playing around in VR. I've had a Meta Quest 2 for probably close to a year and a half now. I've used it for various purposes. I think there's going to be a lot going on with VR as we progress. And one of the things that I think is really cool about VR is that there are ways to basically meet with people in a kind of live setting and do things like we did during COVID. You know, can't go out, so we're having virtual happy hours. We're all jumping on Zoom. We're all doing stuff like that. So one of the things that I think is pretty cool is basically sitting down and watching movies and talking smack about movies. And if it's a really bad movie, just absolutely trashing it. I'm a big fan of the mystery science theater genre, and I actually have the entire collection of their movies. So quite literally, if we just wanted to watch every movie they've ever made fun of, I have them. And this will be done through a program called Big Screen. So there are some limitations to Big Screen, where I think you can only have something like 20 people in the virtual theater. And the best way for me to kind of drop this, not that I anticipate 20 people are going to show up one day and just like kind of pile in, but until, you know, hopefully it gets popular enough that we could do this maybe more than once a month, I'm just going to drop the invite for the Movies with Finn into the Discord channel. There is a server specifically for that. If I recall, I created it a little bit earlier. Yeah, I'm just going to announce what the movie is going to be with the Fridays with Finn. If you want to tune in, great. If you don't want to tune in, don't. It's that simple. These are all movies that I either like or I am curious about, so you can anticipate some real stinkers. I can imagine at some point we're probably going to watch Battleship, which quite possibly is one of the worst movies ever made. But the parts that, you know, you end up wanting to cheer absolutely make up for the horrible garbage that comes before it. Realistically, if you watch the movie Battleship, you can just fast forward to like the last 15 minutes to the point where they basically commandeer, I think it's the Arizona, and then just watch it to the end, and you've succeeded in everything you've ever wanted to accomplish in that movie. But man, those last 15 minutes are absolutely badass. And also bring back some of the other movies that some of you folks may never seen. So I was born in the 70s, and I think I was lucky there because we still had a lot of people invested in the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, Danny Kaye, a lot of the classic actors doing some really amazing things. And I really want to go back and revisit some of those movies. And some of you might just, you know, that's just not your thing. It's going to be super boring because it's not flashy enough, not a lot of explosions, no special effects. But those would be type of things I put on there. And other things, I'm absolutely going to watch Blazing Saddles. Like it is absolutely, by modern standards, probably the most offensive movie that has ever been made. But my God, is it funny? It's just absolutely stupid funny. And Mel Brooks is a genius for coming up with it. So I'll be doing Movies with Finn going forward, one Friday out of the month after Fridays with Finn. That'll be a night. Drop the thing in the drop it in the Discord chat. Whoever shows up, great. Whoever doesn't. I believe you cannot use Big Screen, or you cannot participate in this if you do not have a VR headset of some sort. So just FYI, I'm not telling you folks, hey, you all have to run out and buy, you know, virtual reality headsets or spend massive amounts of money on this. but this is something cool that I want to take part of. I have used this on a personal basis with friends of mine that I don't get to sit down or whatever, and that's kind of the thing that we do, is just kind of sit down, have beers, and watch a movie. And it is one of those experiences that I do cherish. I love going to movie theaters. I love seeing movies on release. I love seeing them in original formats. I have said for years that I believe one of the most important things that any person can literally take as a college course, whether it is actual undergrad or it is for adult education, personal betterment, whatever you want to call it, you owe it to yourself to take a motion picture criticism course. Um, Go to your local community college, pay the audit fee so you don't have to take tests or anything, and just learn how to watch movies and what makes movies cool. It will completely change the way that you watch your television. Because I mean, you'll have some stinkers. You'll actually have some bad movies, but all of a sudden you see something in that stinker that is just absolutely brilliant. Like, I'm not going to say it makes the movie any better as a whole, but there is that one thing where it's like, man, if you only had that moment of genius for the other 119 minutes and 34 seconds, that we'd be doing good here. So just note that big screen betas, the program I'm going to use to something better comes on. And the other cool thing about it is 3D friendly. So I love 3D movies. You can bet your bacon that we're going to be watching Carl Urban's Judge Dredd movie, which I am telling you, in my opinion, which, that and $6 will get you a tall frappuccino these days. The Judge Dredd with Carl Urban is the most beautiful VR or 3D movie ever made. What they did with that is pure brilliance. And Carl Urban, not being a little whiny AAA lister, he absolutely owns the character of Judge Dredd. It's not like the Stallone remake where Stallone had to have his face. Judge Dredd doesn't really show his face. Urban wears his mask the entire movie. It's absolutely comic nerd mecca. Great thing. Great experience. So I'll be doing that. And the other thing that I'm going to try to get up and running over the next 60 days is at least one Friday a month. Probably going to do some live stream gaming. I know other people in the past have said, hey, want to be able to dive in. I created... I forget what we call them on the PlayStation Network or the Xbox Network, but I created communities and clubs and whatnot, specifically for funeral service people to get together and game together. One thing that I've also said for years is funeral service people don't like having to deal with the general public. When they want to decompress, they want to have just conversation with people that understand. They need to have that conversation with people that are in the industry and understand. Anthony Bourdain really landed that home with trying to get a job in the culinary world, that if you have never worked in a restaurant, you just simply don't understand. Like, you don't get it. You don't understand what it is like to be part of that community. And, I served tables for about a year way back in the day. And for me, that was an okay enough job. I didn't mind being a waiter. It was actually a lot of fun to talk to people, get regulars and stuff like that. I couldn't imagine working the back, though. Like, I would not want to be a sous chef. I had no aspiration to ever working the line. But I enjoyed my time there. And I won't ever pretend to be on the same level as the chefs or the barbacks or whoever. I'm a front-end guy. I'm happy to help out with the team, but I do not know what the hell I am doing from a commercial standpoint. And I am not going to go back there and pretend that, I am part of that brotherhood. I am not. But for other waiters, absolutely, we can sit down and talk about that any day of the week. 12 years in food service? Yeah, you did way more than me. Like, if it wasn't for the one restaurant I worked at, I probably would have never gotten into food service. We were singing waiters. And that was probably why it appealed to me so much. I got to meet so many people. My coworkers were phenomenal. And oddly enough, I got along great with all the people in the back. Like, anyone on the line that essentially spoke English, because, of course, it's Florida, and that's probably most restaurants these days, I got along great with. I'm really proud of that, I really... The team that we had at Homestyle Harmony way back in the day, we all got along really well. And there wasn't this people on the line, servers up front sort of thing. We're all in it together, and it was a hell of a shared experience. And for any of you folks that might listen to this that were part of that Homestyle Harmony experience way back in the 90s, hey, piece, man. I still have my apron. I still have my name tag. I even still have my little my little credit card thing that I would walk around with it. I would store receipts and stuff in. Like it's got to be in one of my boxes around here somewhere. So that was the two big things I wanted to do for announcement wise was talk about the fact that we'll be doing some gaming. What I will do is I will drop in the chat my Xbox tag for anyone who wants to join up. I am on PlayStation Network, but got to be honest, my PlayStation is sitting in a drawer right now. I'm basically using my Xbox for gaming and also for like watching movies and stuff. And I am not apologetic at all about my gamer tag on Xbox. I've had it for probably, yeah, I've probably had it since the year 2002. So I have legit had it for over 20 years. For these days, really all I ever play for the most part is Division 2. It's my decompression game. I'll go on and I'll screw around for a couple of hours here and there. I might go on if I'm having a really bad day during my lunch and spend 15 minutes doing a thing. Yeah, Fluster Collect is great. Fluster. What's really funny is no one places I try to use it now on modern gaming networks. I can't use it because they get it. But oh my god, dude, so many places back in the day I could get away with using that, and that's just me sticking it to the man. Love it though, love it. So if you ever want to join me up, you see me online on Xbox Live, feel free to jump on, send an invite. For the most part, I am not a competitive gamer. I am there to chill. It's decompression. It's therapy. That's why something like Diablo 3 was great for me. Just get overpowered, stupidly so, then go in and just wreak havoc. Really did not get into Diablo 4 just because it kind of sucked. The grind was too awful. So I kind of put it down. I've been loath to pick it back up just because grindy, and I don't like getting nerfed. That's one of my big things. I don't like spending all sorts of time getting myself OP'd because I put in that time and then getting nerfed back to like, hey, by the way, you're having too much fun, so we're going to change it. Well, yeah, you're right. I'm going to change it. I'm just not going to play your game anymore. I'm not going to buy any more games from your studio and, kiss it, man. I just don't go for that. That being said, yes, I know the Division has done that. I played Division 1, play Division 2. I'll likely play Division 3 when it comes out. But there's always something at some point that you can figure out very quickly without a lot of effort that you can get OP'd again and you can absolutely go crazy. So, moving on to the subject matter really for this evening, we will go back to the shared screen here. Drop this down here. Boink. Really what I want to talk about today is the experience I had recently with my dad. So if you have me on Facebook or LinkedIn, you have probably seen that my dad passed away the middle of May last month. And I want to talk about the experience now being on the other side of the table, some of the things that I should have done differently. Everything about this is a teachable moment. So I want you folks to be able to take away from this something that you can bring back into your lives so that maybe you don't follow the same path I did and encounter some of the potholes that I did. And mind you, a lot of this stuff I did not think about until the funeralization process was engaged. Hence why I want to talk about this up front, because I've taught this stuff for years, and some of these things I simply did not think of until I was in the process and then realizing, oh shit, something bad here happened. And now, I can't get an answer. I wish I would have asked that. So I started making a list about these things and realized that my live stream is just as good of any forum to discuss them as possible. So the first thing is, we talk in funeral service school about the modern family being very spread out, right? We have people all throughout the United States. Some of our families may have people on the West Coast, the East Coast, and interspersed everywhere in between. And one thing I have absolutely told folks for years is if you want to work and you are a funeral director, if you can relocate, you're going to find a job. Period. Okay? You're going to find a job. Someone will be desperate enough to hire you damn near sight unseen because of the fact it is such a crazy workplace these days. There is so little help that is available. And it is only when you are pigeonholed and stuck in a certain market that you may have trouble actually getting a job. But for the most part, if you want to work and you are not stuck and rooted to some location, you're going to be able to get a job just about anywhere you want, get a provisional license, pass your state laws exam, and get your full license in your new state. And I got to be honest, I really did not think I would ever leave the state of Florida. I thought I was going to live and die in Florida. I was born in Massachusetts. I came to Florida in 1989. I didn't move to Miami until 2012 when work took me there. I had to leave what I was doing or I was going to pop. And then I didn't come to Texas till August of last year. I haven't been in Texas even a whole year at this point. So I did not think that I would ever relocate out of the state of Florida. And that is including when I relocated to Miami. I thought, okay, I'm going to stay in South Florida literally until I retire. What are the chances I'm going to get a better gig somewhere else? Because Miami-Dade College is not a bad school to work for if you are a professor. They have just so many resources to get you good at your game. The problem with Miami-Dade College is it's in South Florida, which is absolutely one of the most ridiculously expensive places on earth to live. If you are not making $90,000 a year in South Florida, you're probably guaranteed to live out of your car. The rent is astronomical. The cost of living is astronomical. Don't even think about buying a house at this point. I mean, it's stupid. And it's unfortunate because you really don't want to be in like your 30s and 40s and having to have two roommates in order to live out of a closet. I mean, it's kind of dumb. So I legitimately never thought I would ever leave the state. And that really is what this is about, is things changed and I did not have the proper conversations. So Chandra says, living less than 5 miles from a funeral school makes it rough. There is inundated with students looking for work, moving away, or long long commutes is pretty much the only option here. Yeah, and I was really lucky. My alma mater for funeral service school was St. Petersburg College in St. Pete, Florida. So I graduated high school. I went to St. Pete College. Then it was called St. Pete Junior College to get an associate's degree. I then transferred to the University of South Florida. I graduated twice from the University of South Florida, once with a bachelor's degree, once with a master's degree. And then I came back to St. Pete to go to funeral school because, I mean, it was right there. It was 10 minutes down the road from where I worked. It was about a 15, 20-minute drive from my house. I really could not ask for much more in regards to that. But the absolute big pain in the ass was the fact that the school is right there, and there are lots of people who graduate, and they're looking for jobs, and you're fighting for the jobs in that local area. Now what's crazy is the fact that I can probably tell you that every funeral home in that area is looking for someone in some capacity without exception. And the fun part about St. Pete College is it's a distance education school. So a lot of their students only come in for laboratories, and they are not there to relocate permanently. It's pretty nuts. So, even then, just because you're in an urban area, there's a school right there, don't think for a second that there aren't opportunities to be had. And from a hiring standpoint, the best advice I can give some of you folks is, remember, an interview works both ways. They're there to see if you're a good fit, and you're there to see if they're a good fit. And one of the things you should be looking at is how often there is turnover at their business. If you see they are just cutting through funeral directors, chances are pretty good there's a problem there. So, getting back to the topic, my dad really did not want to talk about funeral stuff. He's part of that generation. If you talk about it, it's going to happen. But oddly enough, like most things that my dad kind of objected to, he was fascinated by it. He would never openly admit it. Period. He would never openly admit that. But when I said, hey, I got to go do a removal, you want to come, you can wait in the car. Absolutely would do it. Hey, after the removal, I got to go do an embalming, do you want to come? Sure. And nowadays, absolutely you would not do this in no shape and form. Would you want someone that is not licensed or an apprentice or part of the organization in the room? So, old school, you don't think too much of it, even with people that are interested in apprenticing back in the day. Someone's interested in funeral service school, and yeah, they open doors for a little bit. Hey, why don't you come when we do a prep and you watch? I mean, you're not even you're basically a glorified independent contractor. You're a 1099er. So these days, if you're going to let someone into your prep room, you absolutely need to make sure that they are licensed in some capacity, an employee of the firm. You need to disclose in your embalming authorizations, the type of people that are in the room when these type of things take place. And in the 6th edition of the Embalming History, Theory, and Practice by Sharon G. Mascarello textbook, that is very much reinforced, that your embalming authorization should state who is present in the room during those type of things, so that when they are coming in and signing the embalming authorization, that they are giving their tacit permission that those individuals can be in the room. Hairdressers, people like that have a purpose, even though it might not be directly related to the preservation of the dead. So he went with me all over the place. Now, he is first generation, born in the United States, 100% Sicilian. He is 100% Paisano. And cremation is not his thing. My mother absolutely wanted to be cremated, made me swear, made me promise. She did not want to become worm food. She did not want to wake up in a casket. And no amount of, hey, if I inject you with one of the most toxic substances on earth, hun, you ain't got to worry about waking up as worm bait, would change her mind on that. And we honored her wishes. Like, my dad really did not put up a fight about it. That's what his wife wanted, and that's the way it's going to go. And he absolutely did not put up any resistance to it whatsoever when she passed away. For him, it's burial all the way. And he was not a wealthy man. He was pretty much a pauper. That's one of those things that hits a lot of families. The assets just aren't there to be able to pay for a lot of good things or a lot of heavy services. So one of the things that we have to deal with in funeral services, people purchasing services within their budget and not really putting themselves too deep underwater. And I've seen that happen. That people just absolutely have to do things the right way. And my perspective as part of what has happened has changed on that a little bit. We'll talk about that tonight. And the one thing I could promise is that there's no way we're going to afford a decent piece of land at a cemetery in my area. All the nice cemeteries, brand new, never purchased, buy it right from the cemetery, just absolutely out of the range. So then you're relying on purchasing previously purchased land that someone's trying to dump, and hoping it's not a scam or whatever. And I've been in the industry. I know how to sort through it. But realistically, my dad served in the U.S. Army during the Korean conflict. He had access to national cemeteries. And, hey man, if you got access to a national cemetery, let's be honest, you have access to a nice cemetery for the most part. So in Florida, in the area that we lived in the Tampa Bay area. The nearest National Cemetery to St. Petersburg and Tampa is right there in St. Petersburg, Florida, and that's Bay Pines National Cemetery. It's right on the grounds of the VA healthcare system there. They have a hospital there. It used to be called Bay Pines. Now it's renamed for a U.S. congressman. The name escapes me. I think it's Representative Bill Young VA Healthcare Center is what it's called now. So the problem with that is that's cremation only. Now, every now and then they disinter someone and you can have a ground burial, but that is extremely rare. And I've had a couple of burials there for the time that I was in practice, but I mean, we're talking, I can count them probably on one hand. It was a very small number. At the time, the only other national cemetery that was in close proximity was Florida National Cemetery in Bushnell, Florida, which is about an hour and a half north of St. Pete, about 45 minutes to an hour north of Tampa. And I took him up there for a immediate burial. In the industry, we call these drop-ins. Family comes in, no family's going to be present. You go to the cemetery whenever you can schedule it. You bring the casket. You wait for it to get placed, and you're gone. It's as the name implies. It's an immediate burial scheduled at the convenience of the funeral home. No one is present, and you drop in and you go. So on one such drop-in, I said, hey, why don't you come with me? I want you to see this cemetery and let me know what you think of it. So I drove him up to Florida National, finished what we had to do, and then I just kind of drove around the cemetery and said, I really like it. It's really quiet. It's really in the middle of nowhere. What do you think about this? And he said, I really like this. This is really nice. Drove back, and kind of that's the plan, right? So when he passes, we're going to look at Florida National Cemetery. Nowadays, you also now have Sarasota National Cemetery, just south of Tampa Bay, probably about an hour south. When I first started going there, it was brand new. It was barely developed. I have not been back there since I ceased practice, so I can't really tell you what the state of it is now. I hear it has been really made up real nice. To put this in perspective, when I was going there when it first opened, it was operating basically out of a mobile home, and the only places that had grass were the places they were actively using. Everything else was just getting cleared out, etc. So I am talking years ago at this point. And that was the plan. When he passes away, we go to Florida National. It's going to be a burial. If I can't afford a mass and everything the heck else, then it's just going to be a drop-in, and I'll go from there. But Florida National all the way. So then I go to Miami. And even though in Miami, it's still not bad. I'm 3 hours away from St. Pete. It's like me driving to Disney. And for any funeral issues to visit, it's not that much more of a problem for me to drive up to Bushnell and visit my mom and dad at the National Cemetery. So life progresses. Last August, I take the job here in Dallas as president of Dallas Institute, and now I leave the state. Now the problem is my dad is declining. My dad is cognitively declining because of the dementia. I can't have a conversation anymore. And I'm thinking about this, going up to Florida National, dropping him in there, and leaving him there with my mom. And I can tell you that really bugged me. Like, it really started to bug me. And I did not think about this while he was in decline. I thought about this after he passed. And so now the problem becomes, I can't afford to ship someone and buy property out of state and bury him near me, and what happens if I move again? Right? I'm right back to square one. So the only way to solve this is cremation. And that is a huge problem for me. Because whatever my dad said, whatever his wishes were, that is exactly what I followed. If he said, you got to give $2,000 upon my death to this random person, I made a note of all those things. I looked at his accounts. I looked at what he named his accounts. And what instructions he left for me, I have followed to the best of my ability. So I don't like the fact that I'm changing the plan. And I had to ask myself, why is this jumping in my head? Well, I see an awful lot of stuff on social media where people are talking about how everyone only appears at funerals. Everyone starts talking smack on social media, and families start to separate because they're talking smack on social media. Well, years and years ago, I think just after my birth, my dad had a massive falling out with his side of the family. The end result is I never got to know my aunt because he had a sister. I never got to know one of my uncles. It was that bad. It was so bad that when I was in grammar school, I think I was in third grade, turned out that there was a young lady in fifth grade with my last name. And I thought that was really interesting. And I asked my mom, hey, is she related to me? She's like, oh, yeah, that's your cousin, and she's Uncle Tommy's daughter. And I'm like, huh? Because no holidays, no cookouts, nothing like that. So this was a massive falling out. And my dad, very private person, did not talk about these sort of things. Whatever I could get, I would try to get out of my mom. And realistically, I just never sat and I said, hey, you're going to tell me whether you like it or not, because it's my dad, and I'm just not going to give ultimatums like that to my dad. So I come home from the funeral home one day, and I think my dad was sitting in the chair and he was watching Saving Private Ryan. Two of his favorite movies to watch were Saving Private Ryan and the entire series Band of Brothers. And I turned him on to both of them. I saw Saving Private Ryan in theaters, and I told him, if you ever watch this movie, it's probably going to bring back a lot of bad memories, because it is just crazy. It's what war is about. It's the closest thing that you're going to get as an armchair quarterback watching World War II. And when he eventually did watch it for the first time, he said you were absolutely right. Like, he admitted that no holds barred, that's some of the nasty stuff, because my dad was a MASH medic in Korea, so he saw some pretty nasty stuff, and that's why he just really didn't want to talk about it. So I'm coming in and he's watching this, and he's like, hey, do you think I should try to talk to my brother? And now, mind you, when I'm walking home at the funeral home, it's not, I got off at 5 o'clock. I'm probably staggering in at like 8 to 9:30, because by that point we were understaffed, and what business we did was always inconvenient late in the day, etc. So I'm tired, and I don't want to brush him off, so I'm not going to brush him off, because all of a sudden he's talking about my uncle, and that means there's something wrong, because my dad never talks about my uncle. So I kind of just sat down and I said, well, this is what I see at the funeral home. Right? I see these families, they get into these vicious fights. I have to separate them, with a silent barrier down the middle of the room and all this other crap. And I don't think that's healthy. I think that eats away at you. And a lot of that resentment is because people have taken no steps to fix whatever. So if you feel that you need to reach out to the man and talk to him, even if he doesn't want to talk to you, that rests on him. And you get the peace of mind of knowing that you're the one that was kind of being the bigger man about it. And he thought about it for a second. He's like, well, it doesn't really matter because he's already dead anyways. Which kind of threw me for a loop, because I don't know if that was him telling me he just died, or if he tried to do it on his own and then looked him up and found out he passed away. Like I said, complicated. And the problem was, here I am, my dad has just passed away, and I am remembering this random conversation. And I wondered if that might have something to do with the fact that he just like his other family just got abandoned somewhere in some cemetery and forgotten about. And now my problem is, it's in my head. I do not want to leave my mom and dad in some random cemetery where no one lives anymore. That just is not cool to me. I'm just not into it. So I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and realized I got to do cremation for my own mental my own mental health. And that'll be something that I have to apologize for in the great beyond, because I changed the plan. Uh, you know, Northeastern Italians, New York, Massachusetts, places like that, there's only one way to do it. It's traditional. It's traditional for a reason. And that also means it is the only respectful and honorable way to do it. And now that I'm kind of changing the mix, and I know that times have changed, we live in 2024, but that's not my dad's generation, and it's, borderline my generation. So I changed things kind of mid-swing. And I'd always planned to have a traditional service, a visitation followed by a mass, whether it's all going to be in the same day or whatever, because, I'm not made of money. My dad's assets weren't that great. So it's going to come down to what people, what the costs are going to be. So the first thing I can say is, when you're in funeral school and you're looking at your classmates, these are going to be not just your competitors, but they're going to be your peers. You may work with some of them down the line. They're going to be your friends, they're going to be your co-workers, and then they may be business competitors, which is why it's always important to be polite to each other. It's always important to be respectful towards each other, because you never know where life is going to take you. And the one thing I can tell you is, in St. Petersburg, Florida, there's probably less than 4 funeral homes left that are truly independent, where they're not owned by some corporate body, whether it's a small family corporation or whether it's a larger corporation. I mean, truly, there is one person that owns maybe 2 or 3 funeral homes, all under one brand. There's probably less than 3 or 4 left in that entire city. And it just turns out that a former co-worker of mine is at one of these funeral homes, has been there for a while. And I have other co-workers working at other firms that are basically owned by Foundation Partners or SCI or Stonemore, whoever. And the problem is, I can't afford those prices. If I walk in, you're going to charge me $7,000 to $10,000 just for the professional fees and a casket. Now I have to look at everything else. I just simply can't afford that. So I am going to go with a family-owned firm, primarily because, one, they're likely going to give me the best deal I can. And I'm not looking for cheap, I'm just looking for reasonable. And 2, as I've gotten older, I absolutely will pay more at a family-owned place. If it is my choice to use the barbecue place down the street that is a family business, been so for 25 years, or the chain down the street that is owned by, PepsiCo, I am going to be using the family firm all the time. I avoid Walmart if I can. I'd rather do things like HEB or stuff like that, so I'm not... It's just my mentality. So I reach out to my coworker Nathan I used to work with, and I didn't even ask. He just offered a really competitive rate. And that was a tremendous relief. Because, again, assets are limited, and I have to do as much as I can with a small amount of money. So, also having someone that I know personally, that I know does good work, that was also very comforting. That my dad is not with a stranger. It is not with a funeral home with people I've never met. So that had a very calming effect for me. I really did not worry a lot about any of those sort of things. When he was declining rapidly, I did not go to visit him before he passed. Now, this is a highly personal decision that you folks need to make for yourselves. With my mom, I found that I could not stay in the room with someone in, the agonal period, days away from death. That was a profoundly negative experience for me. And either you can view that as a mark of cowardice or a mark of shame. I simply know what my limits are. and there are certain lines that I do not wish to cross because I know it would be very unhealthy for me. And the second thing there is knowing that that would be a possible negative experience, and I am not independently wealthy. I can't afford to fly down there, stay for an indeterminate amount of time, then maybe have to come back and then fly down again for a funeral. And if I do those things, that takes literally money out of the pot for the services that I need to do in the future. So I had to make a very personal decision not to visit him as he was declining. And when I visited in December, I visited at Christmas, I can't say that my dad even recognized me with the dementia. He made no acknowledgement when I was in the room. I mean, he saw I was there. He was looking at me, and I was talking to him because that's one thing you do with people with dementia is you just talk to them. Whether they remember or not, whether they know you or not, you just talk to them, and you treat them normal. It's not their fault, right? It's just an awful disease. And at that point, I literally said my goodbyes. I said my goodbyes the way that I knew I was saying it would be probably the last time I was going to see him alive. And if I didn't, then that would be a beautiful thing because, I'd get to say it again. And I said it in such a manner that it is not, hey, this is it, have a nice day. I'm not that much of an asshat. But I'll see you when I see you, and I'll see you next time. And that's kind of the way I close things. So I got back to St. Pete. For the most part, that was just me showing up to the funeral home the literal day of the funeral, the day of the visitation, so I could sign the paperwork. I flew in for a Wednesday. I didn't fly in, I'm sorry, I drove. I don't like flying if I don't have to. And also because I don't want to risk my flight getting canceled and then I'm screwed and I'm having to scramble. So if I rent a car and I go, I'm controlling the timeline. So that's just me. It is what it is. So I drove down. I got there basically Wednesday afternoon, left on a Tuesday and got there Wednesday afternoon, got into my hotel. First thing Thursday morning, went down to the funeral home, signed the paperwork, and they invited me in to go ahead and take a look before all the flowers were set up or anything like that. And I went in and, I was very impressed with how things looked. And of course, anyone in this business, folks, you're going to walk in and look at other people's work and immediately be a judgmental prick. There is always something you're going to say, you could have done better or whatever the shit. So, unfortunately, I am no better than that. I am simply more tactful, and I'm not going to say anything because I know it's just me being a weeb about it. I am not there to critique their work. It's just a bad habit we all get into that we always see the critical things. And that being said, they did a wonderful job on them. Like, they really did a wonderful job on them. I tasked my nephew and his boyfriend to go out and get him a nice suit because my father needed to be buried in a suit, and buy him shoes and all of that so that he would be properly dressed. I'm not a big fan of that, hey, dress them in a suit and leave their feet sticking out. That's insulting to me. I know there may be people that have different opinions on that, and you're welcome to those opinions. I could not do that for my dad. That is simply the line that I draw. And I was very impressed with how he looked. The one thing that I was very disappointed in, if I was to be disappointed on anything, is apparently towards the end, hospice cleaned him up. So they gave him a really short haircut. They completely clean shaved him. And he hasn't been clean shaven in probably close to 8 years. He has always had a mustache. So seeing him completely clean shaven was a bit of a kick. And I know he was clean shaven before he got to the funeral home because the funeral home never asked me about how he should be. So definitely someone did that prior. And it either happened through hospice or it happened through the living facility he was at. And I am not critical of them. You know, they wanted to clean him up, make him look presentable. And honestly, in the casket, he looks damn near like you see him on the screen right now. That picture of his right there. It was a little crazy for me to see him because he looked so much younger. He literally looked like a nearly bald version of himself. So, another thing that surprised me about that is when I changed my mind about what I was going to do from burial to cremation, I had to change my products because clearly I'm not going to cremate a metal casket. And it turned out that the funeral home I was working with, Sorensen Funeral Home, is an astral casket vendor. And what I will say is, for years and years and years, I have told people about the benefits of things like alternative containers. So here we are on the Astral catalog page, something like the Homestead Coach Cherry. And I find these to be inexpensive and appropriate, me personally, for the type of services that I was going to have. So my pet peeve is I don't like people being taken out of containers. The more you take people out of containers, the more liability you have for misidentification. So, one, I absolutely am a fan of ceremonial caskets. Okay, I'm absolutely a fan of ceremonial caskets. And whether that is a standard metal that you are using and reusing, or whether that is something like here, the Aria Poplar, where you pull the end out and you put an insert. Okay, that is what these are, inserts for rental caskets or ceremonial caskets. That is, I find no fault in it. But what I don't want is I don't want to take him out of a rental that is, say, a very nice metal casket and then put him in a cardboard box. The minimum alternative container. Again, you're swapping. I am not a fan of that. And when you're in funeral school, we teach you that, the best practice as it's presented by the Cremation Association of North America, by National Funeral Directors Association, the ICCFA, the NFDMA, you name an organization that has any sort of cremation training. And you want the person to be viewed, identified in the container they're going to be cremated in, and the moment the identification is done, close it, seal it, be done with it, because of the fact that you now know definitively that person is in that container, and there is little, if any, margin for error until you actually go into the cremation process, right? From there on in, it's all about you keeping the little metal disc where the little metal disc needs to go. But until then, you're solid. So my problem was, I'm trying to decide what I am going to be using for my dad. Because again, I have changed the equation. And I had shown him a metal casket that we were going to use. We never talked about things like hardwoods or something. And the problem now was, I am looking at the engineered woods, I am looking at the hardwoods, and I had basically narrowed my selection down to like the Stockton, the Estate Velvet. I really like the Estate Velvet. The only problem was this wasn't being offered in my market. And I'm not going to say that, that really upset me or anything. It's just that I thought that, hey, that looks like my dad. And the last one I looked at, kind of just, hey, see if you have this, is I saw the colonial cherry. So now the problem becomes, I am pragmatic. Okay, I am pragmatic. And a cremation casket like this and all that expense, one, it's going to be draped in a flag at the visitation. No one's going to see it. And then it's going to be draped in a pall at the church for the funeral mass. So if I spend the type of money that you're going to spend on a casket like this, and easily a retail price on something like this, folks, I would anticipate it's going to sell anywhere between $6,000 and $9,000. This is not an inexpensive piece of merchandise. And this kind of goes against the entire concept of being responsible in this type of situation, because of the fact that, you know, you're dropping a heck of a lot of money on a product that you're likely only going to be using and hidden the entire time. This is where that bargaining comes in. You know, I've changed the game. What do I do here? And what I decided on is I had to do a casket. I had to do something along the lines of this. And this is the product that I selected. And to reinforce just how quote-unquote useless a pretty casket like that is, I did ask the church to live stream for anyone who wanted to watch. So if you want to go to and see this funeral, my dad's funeral, you can go onto YouTube, Blessed Sacrament Church in Seminole, Florida, bsschurch.org or com, I can't remember. And my dad's funeral mass is here in all of its glory, so to speak. And so you have that beautiful casket under a pall. And I will tell you, it is a beautiful casket, and I do not regret the purchase of it one bit. Because it really tied together the whole dignity and respect aspect for his funeral. So you really can't go wrong with a glossy wood. Got to be honest, they're beautiful. And this is a hell of a nice product. Maybe I will try to, I don't have my phone with me, and I don't think I can access my phone. Let me see if I can jump in over here. Ah, yeah. Okay. There we go. So I'll drag this over here real quick. This is it outside of the church. And the picture really doesn't do it justice. And in the sunlight, this is a beautiful casket. I mean, this will blind you. This is a really nice presentation. You may say, hey, he was a veteran. Where's his flag? His flag is actually folded, and directly inside the double doors to the right is where the podium is set up with the register book, and the flag has been tri-folded and it's placed next to the register book, which is fine with me because I really don't want to have to take the flag off, put the pall on, then put the flag back on. Let's just, you know, this worked out. So I was very impressed and very surprised at myself because I had chosen an expensive product. What I will do, since I do have these photos up here, is I will bring a picture of my dad in repose at the funeral home from earlier in the day. So, very modest chapel. There were not a lot of flowers, and I am partially grateful for that because I really don't like inconveniencing people to have to kind of, find a home for them later. We'll talk about that here as well. Just over here to the left, there's a bouquet that was sent by Pierce Mortuary Colleges. That's the actual arrangement that I have kept, and I'm drying out to go with my mother's funeral arrangement. I make a little shadow box for that. But I can really tell you that I was very impressed with the quality of work they did with my dad. And I will put a picture of him a little bit closer up here. When you compare that to his obituary photo, you can see that it is pretty much a slightly more aged version of his younger self. He is very clearly recognizable. Outstanding job with the makeup and the colors. Absolutely no powder whatsoever on the dark suit. So all too often, those of you who are out there, you'll go in and you put some finishing powder or something, and something will get on the shirt collar or whatever, and you try to take it off the wrong way. Impeccable presentation. Absolutely impeccable presentation. Very, very happy for what they did. So, at the visitation, I have no... I really have no idea how many people are going to show up. One, I can tell you that I absolutely expected no one to come from my dad's circle. My dad was 93 going on 94 years old. My dad has outlived the great majority of the people that he knew in the area, in all honesty. No, I don't even know why I'm even wearing headsets. It's not like I have a voice chat going. So I know anyone who would show up was probably going to show up to see me. Right? The people that are coming are probably going to be there because I'm there. And we always hear the term, the funeral is for the living, the funeral is for the living, the funeral is for the living. And abso-frickin-lutely, man, the funeral is for the living. 100%. My mortuary science professors showed up from St. Pete College. Now, mind you, Professors Brown and Professor Davis, I've seen them now at the American Board for almost a decade. I interact with them constantly. But nonetheless, my professors took the time out of their evening. And again, I'm trying to be very mindful to the funeral home because I'm a funeral professional. I don't want to be that guy. So I don't want someone standing there, late in the night for a group of 15 people. So I did something reasonable, 4 to 6. And really didn't want to do 6 p.m., but I know that some people might be getting off of work and want to stop on by. So, if I give them that extra hour, I might get the 1 or 2 more people who'll be able to pay their respects. So I did 4 to 6, and my professors showed up. And they stayed the entire time. They closed it down. I mean, we sat there talking, having all sorts of good times. So one of my coworkers, Nathan Hobson, he was the funeral director in charge, and he was outside running the lobby. I have another coworker that showed up, Mary Rutan. She's a professor over at Florida State College at Jacksonville. She's also teaching, I think, at St. Pete College, and she's, I think, a corporate trainer for SEI. And she's one of the best embalmers I've ever met, and she is one of the most beautiful human beings that I've ever met. She's a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. And totally shocked me she showed up. And I'm very grateful for that, because these are people who, I spent a lot of time with when I was in funeral service. And people, especially her, I've worked with her. We both created courses at Florida State. So, we've had more than just a casual interaction. And she's cool as hell. Like, she really is cool as hell. Then my family friends started showing up. We had one of my best friends, James. So I've known James since my junior college days. And in actuality, my dad is the reason I reconnected with James. So my dad got me a job working as a security guard. And long after I left security, my dad still worked. It was one of the last jobs he did before he just simply wasn't able to work because his hearing was gone. He was working a post in St. Petersburg called the Poynter Institute. Now, the Poynter Institute is a school for journalism. It's basically the Harvard of journalism. And I end up getting a text message, and it's from my buddy James, who I haven't probably seen in like 15 years, because he's working the post with my dad, and he walked in and he saw the last name and asked if, he was related to Finney Finicaro. My dad had no idea what he was talking about. He's like, well, do you have a son? He's like, yeah, my son. His name's Joseph. Tall, redheaded guy? Yeah, that's my son. So James actually did not know my first name was Joseph. So I reconnected with James. So James was literally my dad's coworker. He's the only one that showed up from, the working aspect of my dad's life. He was there. He showed up. When I first started funeral service, one of the first times I was in the back apprenticing as an embalmer, getting things ready for the embalmer, my Dodge Chemical rep, his name was Jay Rhodes. He came in because that was one of his days. He was driving by and coming into the funeral home trying to sell whatever he's trying to sell. And I met Jay for the first time. Jay was an alumnus of the Miami-Dade College program, of which I was program director for a number of years. And Jay came to Miami to do workshops for the students in the embalming lab all the time. Whenever he was in the area, he'd stop by the office and come in and talk shop. Jay stopped by, and I was shocked to see Jay because Jay has since retired, and Jay would have to drive probably 45 minutes to an hour from where he lives, somewhere I think in the Clearwater area. And at that time of night, that's some crappy traffic, let me tell you what. So I was very surprised to see him. And don't take me wrong, I'm delighted to see all these people. I really am delighted to see all these people. Members of my church family. For a long, long time, I sang in the Blessed Sacrament Choir for more than 10 years. A couple of them showed by. My buddy Brian. Brian and I have so many memories of taking over stages at bars and dives and places like that and doing a set of songs when the band goes on break. Traveling together to Italy. Phenomenal. One of my favorite people on earth to hang out with. My little brother Ozzy from the Masonic Lodge. I got a call from his brother Fernando. You don't get too many visitations. Okay, you don't get too many visitations where you're the key player. Parents, for instance. Maybe a sibling. And in my family, we simply didn't do visitations. My mother really did not want she absolutely did not want her body viewed, so we didn't do anything like that. At her funeral, all the people that I knew in industry and whatnot came out. For my sister, she also did not want anything like that, so we did not do anything like that for her. So this was my first experience having a visitation. I then had former students, now licensees, drive up from Miami to pay respect. He's a friend. I can't call them anything other than that because they're friends. My friend Sam and my friend Nicole, who I think is living and working near Orlando, Florida. She drove in to pay her respects to come see me. And it's really these type of moments where you start to really have an idea of what type of impact you are having in people's lives and what the purpose of a visitation is when the people need to come out and support. My friend Paula, who I have known and I love her, again, one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever met. She came with her husband Jim. I was at her wedding. Her son Nick is outside of my buddy James. Nick is, they're tied as best friends in my world. I'm godfather to Nick's son. He came with his wife. A gentleman I haven't seen in a long time. Another guy, a gentleman by the name of James Weaver. He's a pianist in the St. Pete area, music teacher, and he's the staff accompanist there at Blessed Sacrament. I've known him from junior college, and I probably have seen him once since I left for Miami. I stopped in at church to see them at a 4:30 mass and say hi and say, hey, next time I come up, let's try to grab beers or something. He came, and he brought his wife Betty, who was also someone I know from junior college, and his mom Cindy, who I used to sing with in choir. So I had all these people showing up to support me. So I am a firm believer that if you don't have a visitation, you should at least have a gathering of friends. You should have people come out to pay their respects to you, and certainly if you have someone that has passed away that still has a large circle of friends, I am a strong proponent that you have this sort of a situation where you can receive them and they can memorialize and you can laugh and you can have a good time. The one thing I love about my buddy Brian, and I dread the day that we start going into the great beyond. Brian shows up and he has a pocket full of little mini fireballs, fireball whiskey. And absolutely what I would expect from Brian, because the funny part is I was driving to my dad's visitation. I was like, shit, you know what? I probably need to get a bottle for everyone who shows up because they're going to expect it. And then I realized that it's not about me. It's not my visitation. When I die, there's going to be bottles of whiskey. Let me tell you what. It is about my dad. My dad didn't drink at all. So as I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? I really can't do an Irish wake for a guy that doesn't drink. So when Brian showed up and he brought Fireball, absolutely, that made my night. And the wonderful part about Brian, God, I love the man so much. The wonderful part about Brian is anything I am involved in with him. The last two funerals we had, one was for my church friend Frank, God rest his soul. When we had his visitation, Brian and Paul and the rest of the church fam was there. We left the funeral with more booze than we brought, because everyone brought booze. And at my dad's funeral, quite literally, I left with more booze than I started. And I still have about 7 mini bottles of Fireball sitting in a bag in my kitchen right now because I brought them back here to Texas. These are the type of friends I hang with, and these are the friends I love. So it was a perfect night for me to be with my friends. And some people might be offended by that, saying, well, you're there to respect your dad, to memorialize your dad. And I think there is no better way to memorialize my dad than all my friends come out to show their support of me. And one of the greatest things my dad ever felt he put into the world were his children. So the more that I kind of thought about this driving back from, because I knew when I was going through this experience that I was going to talk about this on a live stream, that I wanted to integrate this into my lectures going forward. And then I realized that, hey, why wait for a lecture? Let's do it on a live stream. Let's talk about this. That way it's on YouTube, and people that find this stuff later, can get this very candid discussion that I'm having. And when it was all said and done, it's time to go. It was 6:05 or 6:10, and I said, that's it, folks, we're wrapping this up. It's time to go. Funeral home people have to go home. They got a busy day tomorrow. They need to see their friends and family. And I walked up and I kissed my dad, and that was that. Walked out. Looking back, I probably should have closed his casket, but it didn't occur to me to do that at the time, because I'd see him, the next day. It is what it is. So when my mom passed away, I handled every aspect of her funeral because I did it myself. There was no funeral home involved. I arranged the church, etc., etc. My friend Fred Eschenfelder, he's the director of music there at Blessed Sacrament. I've known him since my junior college days. And I will flat out tell any person who will listen, every great thing in my life has literally come from Fred, because Fred is the guy who told me, hey, we're looking for some help at the funeral home. Do you want to come down and help out? And if it wasn't for that conversation, my life would have taken an absolute different turn. I probably never would have entered funeral service. Professor Finn would not exist. Um, so Fred came. Um, and what's really amazing about that is I cantored at Fred's church for a decade. And Fred's father passed away. And I sang his mass. I was with him through that experience for him. And it was very comforting for me to know that going through this experience with my dad, that Fred was there backing me up. If you listen to the mass, you'll see that there are some points where I am breaking down, which surprised me a little bit, because there is on stage and there is off stage, and when I am on stage, I am on stage. That mode is on, and I just do it. And it was a real challenge for me when I started to drift into that grieving section, whether that's good or bad, to keep my composure. And I've said for years, if I can do this for strangers, literally thousands of strangers, I need to be able to do this for my own family. So I don't regret that, I had those moments during the Mass. That humanizes it, that tells me I'm human. And I did not get frustrated by it. I just recognized that that's what it is. Like, you are sad, you're grieving your father, but you're also doing the readings, singing the hymns, at least as much as I could, because of the fact that I walked the casket down the aisle. So I couldn't do the opening hymn, and I couldn't do the closing hymn. But everything else I did. So got there early, got set up, waited for the funeral home to arrive, started receiving my friends. Really, no one else came to the funeral. The people that had come to the visitation largely came to the funeral, so it was no one new. It was really weird pulling that casket in. The casket was very heavy for me. It was very, very heavy for me. Almost like it didn't want to pull up to the front. And I know that is just my mind messing with me because it's on a church truck. It's a heavy-ass wood casket. I mean, that damn thing probably has to weigh like 220 pounds. And even if my dad was probably down into the hundreds, like 140-ish, that's almost 400 pounds of box and human. So it is not going to be something easy to move. And generally, it is easier to push those things than it is to pull those things. And I wasn't thinking. So I got up to the front and I pulled it up front, which just made me dismissing the pallbearers that much easier because then I didn't have to walk around them or anything. I was already right there. But I got very emotional pulling my casket of my father up to the front. And I will tell you as a funeral professional that you probably need to do that. You probably need to push the casket up to the front. Don't want to say that there's anything wrong against just sitting there and watching the funeral director come in. It's different when you're the one doing that for your family member. And the same thing with going on the way out. The beautiful thing about using your church is that I can't tell you how many, hundreds of times, thousands of times, I have folded that pall. So there's literally nothing for me to figure out. I go in and I do what I have done 1,000 times before. And for me, it was very cathartic to do this funeral. And unlike before, where I was running everything and I was in the moment and making sure that, people were setting up in the hall and all of that crap, here I had a funeral director to handle all of that garbage, so to speak, while I could focus on the stuff that was important to me and give me a clear head. And as a result, I remember every aspect of my father's funeral. I have no such recollection for my mother's. And live streaming was not a service the church offered back in 2014, 2015, when she passed away, 2014, when she passed away. So I really have no recollection of that other than the moments that pop in here and there, because it was just me worrying about everything. Here, all I had to worry about was walking up to the front, not falling over my own feet, and staggering back without falling over the casket or dropping it. Equally important is after the visitation, the people that were left, I took them out to dinner. Local Thai sushi place right down the street from the funeral home. Some of those people, again, I haven't seen in years. Some drove up from great distances. So buying them dinner, it was absolutely a no-brainer for me. And then after the funeral, same exact thing. That the people who were there, whoever was able to go, there was an Outback right down the street. I haven't eaten at an Outback in forever. But it just figured like a, decent place to go. In all honesty, my dad would have preferred probably we gone to a Chinese buffet or if one was still in the area, a Golden Corral, because my dad loved Golden Corral. But the problem was the one buffet I would go to in that area was closed. I don't want to risk any other trashy buffets. And there's absolutely no Golden Corrals left in Pinellas County, Florida. So any place that would have been in honor of my dad, yeah, just simply was not going to happen. And if you're from the St. Pete area, the only other place you would have eaten would have been Mazzaro's Italian Market. We're not going to try to stuff like, 12 to 14 people at a Mazzaro's. That place is a madhouse. You would think they sell crack out of that place. So I was very surprised at the way I viewed the merchandise. Like the comfort of knowing my dad was in that casket, that it was a high quality product. And it just so happens that, the circles I run in these days, I know the chief executive of Wilbert, and Astral is a Wilbert company. And I spoke to him briefly after the funeral, and I complimented him what a great product he had. Like, I looked at this casket, and the joints were great. For those of you out there, you've probably seen some caskets from major suppliers where the jointing is just awful, and you can see where they just put filler in there in an attempt to hide the fact that, you've got a 1/4 inch separation in the wood. There was nothing really like that on this casket. I was very happy with that. So it really was a high quality product. And I did not think that I would perceive that as important as I am perceiving it. I really did not think that this would have such an lasting impact on how I perceive the value of my funeral by using using a cremation casket. But from my standpoint, that I've identified my father in that casket. This is the casket that came to the funeral. I know my dad is in there. No ifs, ands, or buts. They put this into the retort. I know my dad is going in that retort. It's that simple. So I didn't get a lot of floral arrangements. Flowers were not forbidden. I didn't say, hey, don't send flowers. I said, hey, if you want to send flowers, great, but otherwise consider a contribution to, I've established a memorial fund in honor of my mom and my dad. My dad actually started this back in about 2015, 2016. He wanted to put some money aside to help pay for things for students at my mortuary school. In this case, it was Pi Sigma Eta memberships. So we put a little fund aside for it. He started putting some money, and I started contributing some money to it. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna formalize this. So my project over the summer is to formally create a trust, turn it into a not-for-profit, a 501c3, so that it lasts going forward, even past me. And for everyone who's contributed, I'm going to match the contribution. So some people cash app some stuff. I got to send the thank yous out for that. I've seen them roll in on Cash App, but I got to be honest, I simply haven't checked it. Coming back after the funeral, I've had to get back into the pilot seat of the stuff that I have to get in the pilot seat for. But those thank yous are forthcoming, and I'm going to match every one of those contributions so that I can build this corpus pretty quick. And going forward, that might be my charity of choice for anything. So that, my mom and my dad's legacy are kind of cemented, that if you're going to be at a Pierce College's school and you do not have the money to afford a Pi Sigma Eta membership, that, there's an alternative you can turn to. The second thing that was really important to me is, what do I do with the flowers when I'm done? One thing that I have done for years and years and years and years is, if you have easy access to a national cemetery, national cemeteries will take every flower that you have to place on the graves. and then they will dispose of them when they become unsightly. So literally, you just pull up your van, you dump as many flowers as you want on different graves, and people visiting the cemetery get the benefit of seeing all these beautiful flowers and all these grave sites. The cemetery gets the benefit of that upgrade in appearance, and you get the satisfaction, and the client family gets the satisfaction of knowing that this has gone to a worthy cause. Unless you have someone who absolutely hates everything to do with the U.S. military, then for the love of God, don't do that, because that's just stupid. So my issue is normally when I did this, I would just go into Bay Pines National Cemetery and just choose the oldest graves possible. And graves at Bay Pines go back to the Spanish-American War. I mean, there's some old graves there. And what I realized is, I've buried people at Bay Pines. I have people that I knew at Bay Pines. So what I chose to do with the flowers is leave them at graves of people I knew. So I didn't explain this on Facebook, not by any stretch of the imagination. But what I did is think of people I could drop my flowers off at. And let me pull up the screen real quick, because I'm going to talk about these individuals a little bit. So the first one here is a guy by the name of Albert McMillan. God rest his soul. He served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Al was a hell of a guy. He was a brother at my Masonic lodge. And he got one of my dad's arrangements, one of the family arrangements. So Masonic lodges are crapshoots. I hate to say that these days. But you can walk into a lodge and it could be a bunch of old guys who are just grumpy and really don't want any new blood and, kind of stick to themselves, and maybe you stick it through, maybe you don't. So I go to the Masonic Lodge, Gulf Beach Lodge number 291 there in Madeira Beach, Florida. And my first night there, I bumped into a bunch of these old guys. We got Al McMillan, we got Pete Bankston, we got both of the Sawyers, Miles and his son John, a couple of others. And Al is a wisecracking son of a bitch. Let me tell you what. Al is friggin' comic relief. And between him and Pete Bankston, I am reminded of a story that Mark Hamill says. So they're on the set of Star Wars, and Mark Hamill it comes to the set, and he meets Ben Kenobi for the first time, Alec Guinness, right? He meets Alec Guinness. And he tries to fanboy a little bit over Guinness, and Guinness is absolutely not having it. Alec Guinness wants to know everything about a young Mark Hamill, and is completely interested in who he is as a person and all of that. And that is exactly the way that I felt walking into that Masonic lodge. Al and Pete and the rest of these guys were interested in me, and sitting down and talking to me and wanting me to feel welcome and wanting me to feel like I belonged there, like this is a place I should naturally fit in. Unfortunately, Al had health issues, and I think shortly after I was made a fellow craft, or shortly after I was made a master mason, Al passed away. And I was there at his funeral, graveside there at Bay Pines National Cemetery. He's one of the lucky ones. We were able to call up and get him into Bay Pines. I think the services were handled through Moan Funeral Home. I can't remember. But they were able to get him a burial spot at Bay Pines, which I thought was phenomenal. So I was like, you know what? I haven't visited Al in years. I'm going to stop by and bring him some flowers. That made me feel real good. And I will tell you, it is absolute bullshit to walk around a national cemetery in a shirt and tie trying to find a grave in Florida heat. I don't miss it, and I hope I never go back. Fun fact, when you go to a national cemetery and you go to the grave locator and you type in the name of the veteran you're looking for, it does not sort it for just that cemetery. It looks at any national cemetery in the network. So, like a complete jackass, for about 15 minutes, I'm trying to follow a map of Florida National Cemetery for Albert E. McMillan, because I couldn't remember Al's middle initial. But when I pulled up his last name, MC, Millan, I just printed the map and I went to go look for it, and the damn map didn't work, and I wondered what the hell I was doing wrong. So I went back to the front, I retyped McMillan, and I realized as I was driving back to the thing, about to walk into the front desk, that it said Florida National Cemetery at the top, and I just assumed it was a Florida National Cemetery, not the Florida National Cemetery. So when I got the right name, it pulled up as Bay Pines National Cemetery, and the grave site was roughly where I remembered it. And then you still have to truck it down and find the foolish thing. So this was a little bit of a walk, and I do not miss trying to breathe in 100% humidity and 98-degree heat at all. Now, the second person that I brought is my good buddy Pete. What happened over here? This isn't... What just happened? There it is. So, Al died shortly after I became a master mason. So Pete died about a year or two ago. I can't remember, and I can't really read what his death date is here in his grave, but I want to say, I know it was within the last year and a half because I was in Miami at the time. And I don't think I was even a blip on the radar. No, it was probably about a year ago the fall. It was probably a year ago the fall. So probably 2022 is when he passed away. So Pete became one of my best friends at the lodge. Pete was my marshal for the year that I was master, and Pete got a part-time job working at the funeral home I did. So he would be one of the guys I would call to open doors and go with me at car rides and stuff like that. And I spent a lot of time with Pete. Pete easily became one of my best friends at the lodge. And I miss this SOB a lot. The stories he would tell were just pure brilliance, man. He was a MP in the Army. He then went into the FBI after he left the Army. And then he opened up a flower shop. He was the owner of Seminole Florist. Sold that. He was a Seminole City Council person. He was a major league umpire. There's a picture of him giving shit to Pete Rose that popped up at his funeral. I mean, there was so much this guy just did not know about. And I got to see him with a mustache, which blew my mind because he absolutely never had facial hair, hated facial hair. And I got to see him with a mustache at his funeral, and it absolutely made my night, because I know if he knew that ever saw that photo, he would absolutely kick my ass to keep my mouth shut. So he's at Memorial Park Cemetery in St. Pete, so I drove down there to drop that off, so that every aspect of this funeral had some personal meaning for me, so that nothing was literally going to waste. The last floral arrangement, because again I kept the arrangements from Pierce Mortuary College to go in the shadow box. It was this arrangement, and this was given by my friend James and his wife Betty, and his mom Cindy, which was very nice of them to get a basket like this. And I put this in front of the grave of Father Ed Warzinski, retired Colonel, United States Air Force, and Catholic priest. Father Ed is probably one of the most important men I've ever met in my life. Very spiritual person, very holy person. This was a guy who absolutely walked the walk and lived a very holy and a very good life. I really do miss my conversations with him. And he is interred. He was cremated. We handled his arrangements. I cremated him. He was one that I personally did. They're at Calvary Catholic Cemetery. And what was odd is, as I was leaving that cemetery, I'd finished saying my goodbyes to Father Ed. Normally, if I have time, I will stop and visit Calvary Catholic and give him a Hail Mary real quick when I travel. As I'm walking out, I see a gravestone from the road, And on the back of this gravestone is just the name Factor, Factor. And this is Dr. Regis Anthony Factor. I can't say he was my favorite professor. I can't say that he was a remarkable professor, other than he gave me one of the most memorable experiences in college that I have ever had. I had stated earlier that, I went to St. Petersburg College. I transferred to USF and got a bachelor's degree. Well, when I first transferred to USF, the University of South Florida, I went to the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus for political science and business. And I was in Dr. Factor's contemporary political thought class. And contemporary political thought is dedicated to the review of totalitarianism, despotism, tyranny, every really nasty type of governance, really none of the good stuff. So you learn about every dictator known to man, every ruler that really is just a walking, living avatar of crimes against humanity. And this guy is a brain on this. So World War II happens, U.S. Army and the U.S. intelligence services want to figure out how Hitler came to power. So they literally send Dr. Factor into Germany to study Hitler's rise to power. So he comes back, he presents all his evidence, and he finds in his research that Hitler is unlike any other despot, not like Stalin, not like anybody. He has a very unique rise to power. And that's why he's not a tyrant. He is something different than that. And the form of rule that they attribute to Nazi Germany has been totalitarianism. And that's why he's different than cult of personality and other stuff. It's some pretty wacky stuff. So this is obviously a very important aspect of his class because this is something that is his forte. And what was remarkable about Dr. Factor is when I only had one class with the guy. The first night there, this is how much of an impression he made. Like I said, he's not my favorite professor, but he's probably one of the most important educators I've ever had in my life. Dr. Factor went through the roll, and all the men were Mr., and all the women, he asked if it was a Mrs. or a Mrs., right? A Miss or a Mrs., married or not. And he made a notation on the roll. And whenever he called on you in class, it was always by Mr. or Miss or Mrs. He never used first names. He always was using very formal language. And after his class, I had the most boring class on earth in the form of college statistics. So I left his class one time, and I'm sitting out back because you leave the classroom, and then 2 rooms down is my stats class. So I'm just kind of sitting on the floor, going over my notes. And Dr. Factor was this relatively skinny, lean guy, white short-sleeve shirt, black pencil-thin bow tie, horn-rimmed glasses, plastic suitcase. I mean, right out of the Men in Black. No joke, man. This guy was a G-man, born and bred. And as he's walking by, he stops, and he comes back, and he goes, "Mr. Finicaro, can you explain to me the factors that are attributed to the rise of a totalitarian leader?" And so we had just had a test on this. We'd spoken, for 2 weeks about this. So it's fresh in my head, and I actually liked this class, so I paid attention. I actually memorized this crap. And so I listed all these criteria. And the criteria, the ones that I remember now, we're talking almost, 30 years later, is little faith in government, deflated economy, low dollar. Those are the real big ones. And so this is, like I said, 1995, 1996 maybe. And Dr. Factor goes, "So what can you tell me about how people perceive the government right now?" I think this was like either right before or right after Bill Clinton. What type of economy do we have? And as I'm wrapping up my statement about the economy, well, people don't really whatever, I just kind of stop because it's hitting me. he gets this huge smile on his face, like he just won the lottery. And he looks at me stone cold with this really sad smile, and he goes, "And that's why, Mr. Finicaro, I am so scared." Thank you for the conversation. I'll see you next class, Mr. Finicaro. And he went his happy way. That is the moment in my life that education changed for me. That is the absolute moment that I realized education is not about books. Education is about life, and it's directly applicable in some way, shape, or form to your life. You just have to find, how it squeezes in there. And I'm having this revelation, basically, of what is happening with this funeral. Like, I am seeing what I have taught for years, experiencing it, all this other stuff. And I just thought it was crazy that as I am leaving to head back to Texas, because this was one of the last spots. I'm sorry, no, I left for Texas the next day. This was after after dinner, after we went to lunch after my dad's funeral. I see his grave. And of course, I'm sitting and go, "You son of a bitch. You knew something, man. You knew something." And I texted a friend of mine, Steve, who's an attorney. And I know that Steve, the first time I met Steve was in Dr. Factor's class. And I did not know that Steve became a protege of Dr. Factor. Because I had asked him years ago, it's like, "Hey, I'm trying to remember this guy's name, this professor you and I had in that philosophy class." And he dropped it immediately. So I took a picture of this and I sent it like, "Hey, I think this is Dr. Factor from wherever." And Steve shared with me that, yeah, it is. He was there at his visitation because Dr. Factor was a stalwart Catholic, like a hardcore Catholic. And I didn't realize that Dr. Factor was a very strong influence on him. That Steve stuck with him after I left, because I had 2 semesters at St. Pete. I went into music after that, and I kind of completely fell out. Which is sad, because looking back, I really would have enjoyed probably, taking more of Dr. Factor's classes. And I would absolutely give half of the blood in my body, be able to sit down with him right now and just have a conversation about the status of everything in the world today, especially the United States. So I'm now going to kind of dive back in here, because again, when I'm sharing stuff and clicking between screens, chat disappears, and I see the chat has kind of exploded. So I'm just going to start at the top, because Chandra, we were talking, what is your opinion on trade embalmers? I don't mind trade embalmers, and actually a trade embalmer did my dad, because I asked about that. Who embalmed him? I wonder if it might have been someone that I knew, and it was a trade embalmer. The guy did really good work. What's funny is when my student Sam showed up, I walked him to the front, and the first thing I asked him was, "Now, what would you do different?" Right? Look at my dad. What would you change? What would you do different? And the first thing he said is, "I would set the features a little differently," which I thought was extremely interesting, because I'm looking at my dad and I don't see anything there that I would do differently in regards to features. I think that for the most part, his features are on point. And in the photograph, the colors look perfect. I can tell you that no flash, because if I did that, the colors would look awful. The makeup is on point. Looks very natural. Everything is there. My dad looks dead. Okay, he shouldn't look like he's taking a nap. He should look dead. I'm a big fan of that. That they need to look good in death. They don't need to look like they're sleeping, because that is death denial. So my dad looked very good in death. And the only complaint that I had, if I was to have a complaint, really it's more of a criticism, is I probably would have added a ½ ounce more dye to whatever mix was used. Which likely would have resulted in a little bit less cosmetic. Probably would have been able to get away with a tincture rather than using what I think is cream cosmetic. Now, that being said, he looks absolutely fine. So for those of you that came in late, I'll just jump back real quick to tell you what I'm talking about here. you can see that he looks very natural. Um, Also, no makeup in the hair. Attention to detail. What I think about trade embalmers, people who are coming in doing whatever, and I don't know who did the makeup, so I didn't ask about that. But there was no makeup in the hair, not in the eyebrows, nowhere. So that's a mark of excellence. That's a very important thing for you professionals and future professionals. If you are putting makeup on a person, make sure you're budgeting in enough time that you can go in and you can go ahead with the Q-tip and some dry wash or alcohol and clean any of the areas where makeup should not be, like on hair. Get a comb or something under there, a small mustache comb, and rub the makeup out so it's not there looking ridiculous. So I have no beef with trade embalmers, providing they can do the job, and they're not just using trade embalmers to use trade embalmers. Um, I think we're probably going to find that as funeral service progresses down this path of green burial and natural organic reduction and stuff like that, your trade embalmers are going to be the best embalmers in your area because they're the only ones doing it. That's just my opinion. Kenny writes, when did you drive? What did you drive in? I drove a Ford Edge. So anytime I do driving cross country or anything like that, I never take my own cars. I go down to, I use basically exclusively, I use Enterprise. Simply because I'm a big fan of picking one company, getting as many reward points as possible so I can get the best service possible. So I use Enterprise, which is the same one I used when I was in Boston. Which, hey Bubba, I'm heading back to Massachusetts in 2 weeks. I'm going to be going to a conference over there in Marlboro. So I don't know I'm going to have a lot of time. I'm basically coming in, going to my hotel, going to conference, going back to hotel, and then flying the hell out. But I can anticipate I'll be coming back to Mass a couple of times. I'll shoot you a holler. So I got a Ford Edge. And it's not a bad car. I wouldn't buy it. That's the other thing I like about renting cars, is I try to rent something different every time. Which is why I can tell you that I'm a real big fan of the new Camry. Now they discontinued the Avalon. If I'm going to buy another four-door sedan, I'm likely going to buy a Camry. The new Camrys have a large front end, almost as big, if not bigger, than the Avalon. So my fat ass fits in it fine. I'll tell you what, though, man. So for those of you that don't know, when I was at the American Board, there was no cars left in Boston. So you fly into Logan, you go to Enterprise, there are no cars left at any of the rental agencies. The only thing they had left was the luxury line. So I ended up getting a BMW 7 Series because I absolutely had to have my own car. I had to drive between the conference places. I had other meetings I was going to, and above all else, I wanted to do a quick drive through my home turf and visit my old church. So I got a BMW 7 Series. Now those cars are absolutely ludicrously expensive. Like brand new, they're like 120 grand. I will absolutely buy one at some point. Like that 2023 i7, I'm buying one. No ifs, ands, or buts. So here's the fun part about BMWs. One, accept the fact that you are going to pay like $3,000 for brakes on these friggin' things. Okay, just accept the fact the maintenance is going to suck. But if you don't mind waiting 3 to 4 years, all those $120,000 BMWs drop to about 40 to 50 grand, which is about the price that you're paying for a nicely loaded Toyota Camry that's going to be in the high 40s if you're getting something like a limited or touring package, which if you're going to buy the damn car, you might as well buy it with all the bells and whistles, because why not? It's all run by computers, so enjoy it while you can. I never understood why people buy luxury cars. Right. That BMW fit my fat ass like a glove. That car was literally made for me, which is saying something, folks. I'm 6'1" and almost 400 pounds. That car was the most comfortable damn car I've ever been in. So I literally have installed the Auto Trader app on my phone. I typed in the year so I don't forget what make and model. And about 2026, 2027 car year, I'll be looking for that 2023 with about 40,000, 50,000 miles on it. And it'll probably be right around 40 to 50 grand. And I think I can swing a non-daily driver comfort car at that point. And that'll be the car I probably drive the rest of my life, because I do not get rid of my cars. I have a Jeep, 2006 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I bought that in 2014. I still have it. and I will likely have it till the day I die. It's probably the best car I own. The Avalon, I love the Avalon. I'm probably going to have to trade that out. Stunning cat. Yeah, the casket's beautiful. Like, had a conversation that people who with someone, and it was like, I have a theory that people who work with woods like woods, people who work in metals or stone like the metals. And I'm like, dude, I just like woods. And above all else, the big thing for me is I put my dad in this casket, and I never have to worry about him coming out again, because that's his casket, period. Judging us when trade guy makes a mess, that's just sloppy. Like, it's so funny how people view like trade embalmers and stuff like that, because some trade embalmers are absolutely meticulous, and some are the exact opposite. It's not my funeral home, so it's not my problem. That's what the apprentices clean up, and that's the type of mentality that needs to change. Like, if I'm a trade embalmer and I'm coming into your firm, right? One, you're doing me as much of a favor as I'm doing you a favor, right? You need someone to embalm this body, so you're calling me. I sure as hell don't want to have a day job, so I'm basically trade embalming. But when I come into your firm, I am representing your firm. I'm an extension of your firm, and everything that I do is going to reflect on your firm. So I am going to do my highest standard of quality. Now, if you tell me, hey, when you're done, and leave, that's what the apprentices are for, to clean up, that's on you. Otherwise, when I am done, mop the floor real quick, wipe down the countertops, I'm out the door. That's what I'm supposed to do. I leave it as I found it. That is our ethos, right? We leave it better than we find it. At a minimum, we leave it as we found it. So if your trade embalmer's making a mess, your trade embalmer should be cleaning it up. You and Dan going traveling, dude, good luck with that. Like, any car Dan can drive, you probably can't, bro. Mickeline, how you doing? Professor Dowers, good to see you. Did you find yourself almost frozen? A couple years ago, my grandmother completed suicide. I absolutely behaved as I had never funeral service before and had zero clue what I was doing. No, I didn't freeze. I don't freeze. That's just me. I don't freeze. I was actually surprised I got as emotional as I did during the sections of the Mass. So there are the songs that I picked are especially important to me. I was that guy. I felt really bad doing this to the church because, they sent me the packet. Here's the stuff you can select from. And it's like, putting toppings on my pizza. I really didn't want to think about readings. I got to be honest. My dad was a strong Catholic early in his life. Towards the end, not so much. Just infirmity, whatever. And as much as I am a student of the Bible and I am a Christian, I'm not one of those folks that drops Bible quotes from memory. That's just not my way of doing it. And I really didn't want to look anything up because really there's nothing in the Bible I'm going to find that's appropriate to my dad. It's just not. So whatever is appropriate for the Mass, for the readings, I'm going to go with that. So I picked the ones I figured were the best because I'm probably not going to find anything better, if I'm going to be honest, without a considerable amount of work. And I'm just not going to expound that for readings. But when it came to the songs, I realized that two of the songs I put on there are just nice funeral songs, maybe not indicative of what I would want. So I actually put on songs that were meaningful for me. One of my favorite songs in the Christian literature is a Hispanic song, Pescador de Hombres, or in the English in the hymnals it's called Lord You Have Come. And I noticed they have a new translation of it, which sucked. And I actually ended up singing some of the verses from memory because the new translation sucks. But it's one of my favorite songs to sing in Spanish and in English. So I had to add that. When we were looking at what we're going to put on my dad's prayer cards, what am I going to do? The Our Father, the Hail Mary, any of that BS. And I'm like, that's what everyone does. And then I realized, hey, you know what? One of the most beautiful things you can put on a prayer card for a vet is either a verse from their hymn, like the Army song, the Army hymn, whatever, but really the modern version of the Navy hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. There are several versions of Eternal Father. The first one is strictly sailor 100%. You're either a squid or you are not a squid. It's that simple. Somewhere along the lines, Eternal Father got verses for each one of the branches of service, right? So you have the Navy and the Marine Corps, which are predominantly water based. You have the Army, and you have the Air Force, land and sea. So there's a very popular version of the Navy hymn that covers all of the armed forces. And what I ended up doing is putting both the first verse, which is the Navy verse, and I think it's the second verse is the Army verse on his prayer cards, and they alternate. So some people got Navy, some people got Army, and I was okay with that. Like some people said, "Oh, I thought he was a Navy guy." Yeah, no, 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 no. It's a beautiful song, and for a vet, that is one of my favorite things to put on there. And if you're a Marine, the only thing that you should put on a prayer card for a Marine is the final verse of the Marine Corps hymn, because it closes with um, and when the Army and the Navy should look on heaven seen, they'll find that the streets are guarded by United States Marines. It's the last possible way that a Marine can throw shade at the Army and the Navy. And when I have recommended it to my Marine families, they absolutely dig it. They absolutely love it because it is the core of what a Marine is. So if you folks are ever in a situation with the Marine and they're kind of trying to debate what to put on a prayer card, go for the last couple of sentences from the Marine Corps hymn, because it's just fabulous to throw that last bit of shade. That's just me. We all grieve differently. You memorize and respect in a way that's best fitting for you and your dad. Exactly. I feel that my dad got a decent funeral, right? He got the level of service that I have given to strangers for years. And really the influence for that, for those of you folks that follow me on social media, when I was at NFDA last year, I was with Gabe Schauf of A Brush with Death. We're in there doing a podcast recording, and I get a knock on the plexiglass, and it's a guy by the name of Dale Gunter. He used to own Gunter Funeral Home in St. Petersburg, Florida. He's now retired. He's a funeral director and embalmer. His brother Dean was my manager at Reese Funeral Home, and Dale's a phenomenal guy. Like every time, Dale literally just makes me smile. He's like one of the most happy people I know, and he's absolutely rocking retirement. He has worked hard his entire life, and he has earned every second of it. So any chance I get to see Dale, give him a hug, catch up with him, talk with him, is absolutely pure gold for me. I love bumping into him, and it was him knocking on the glass. And Dale and Dean's mom passed away, and her funeral was at Dale's funeral home. And out of courtesy, a lot of the people in the area, a lot of us practitioners went to, pay our respects. At the time, I was going, if I wasn't president, I would soon be president of the Pinellas County Funeral Home Association, of which Dale was a member, and Dale was a past president. And Dean told me that Dale had done everything himself. He embalmed his mom. He did all of those things. And, why would you do that? And Dale said, I've done it for all the strangers. Why wouldn't I do it for my family? And that stuck with me. So one of the things that I wanted to do with my mom that I couldn't do is I was going to try to get her remains to my embalming lab, because she absolutely wanted as much as she could donated to science. And the problem was the cancer treatments, the drugs, all that sort of stuff took its toll, and she was unusable. And there were no studies of which anyone wanted any of her tissues. So the last possible thing I could think of was to utilize her in an embalming lab and have students assist me in preparing my mom. Problem was, didn't have the money to transport her down to Miami and back. That's the truth of the matter. And I even thought about maybe talking with St. Pete College and doing it up there. Well, the problem was she passed away during the summer semester. And during summer semester, they don't do embalming labs. And I'm not going to trouble Professor Brown and Professor Davis to, have me bring a team up there and embalm a body there. So that didn't happen. So I wanted something to come out of this, like, something more to come out of this. And I think my Dad would find some comfort in the fact that, you know, that this has become a teachable moment. Even though I drifted from the plan, that, you know, it's still respectful, and that his family in Messina, Sicily, are very strong Catholics, and I think very traditional Catholics. And it was a real struggle for me to kind of, you know, say, hey, let's go cremation here. It's not like they had input, but I also don't want to disrespect them. You know, I don't know them very well, and that's on me. But every aspect of this was made with every family member I could think of in mind. And I have to do what I have to do for me, and I had to do this for me. Thank you, Fred. Yeah, seriously, Fred has been a wonderful friend over the years. I couldn't tell you who's back more, me or him, for each other, but he has been, and he is a lifelong friend. Is being big guys, it's difficult to get those arms back. Most definitely to do it for your family. I pushed my mom's casket. Yeah. And again, I was just surprised at how hard it was to pull. And it could have been, you know, hell, the people next to me weren't really pulling or pushing, and I was doing it myself with 400 pounds. What an impact. Yeah, Dr. Factor left an impression. I want to be Dr. Factor, at least one of my students in my town. What an effect. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beautiful part about funeral service, is that we have those moments all the time when something just connects. And unlike Dr. Factor, who taught like one subject, you know, funeral service professors, we teach a little bit of everything. And we can jump back and forth with embalming or whatever. And I think that's one of the things that I'm grateful for with my grasp of embalming is, you know, people listen to my lectures on YouTube. I become part of their education as they're going through their respective mortuary colleges. They ask questions to me via email. They come to live chats and they talk and they ask. And, you know, every one of those things is kind of like a Dr. Factor moment for me, because, like, you know, they're remembering me. And they're going to think about that, and long after I'm gone, when, you know, they're into retirement, they may share stories about stuff like that, or they may go into education, and they take that with them. You got the big one? Yeah, I got the big one. What do you drive for a personal car? I drive an Avalon. I have a 2016 Toyota Avalon, which is my dream car. I've always wanted an Avalon. And I have that 2006 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Before that, I had a Prius. And I'll tell you, the old Toyota Priuses, they have a huge front end. They have the same front end space as a Camry. So I don't know about the new ones. I'm never going to buy a Prius again. Just because of the fact that when the battery died in my Prius, it was stupid expensive to swap it out. It was like $4 to $6 grand. And then it didn't even last like another year. Other shit started to break on it. So I'm not a big fan of the electric cars unless there's like undo 15 bolts, drop the car onto a new battery platform, and let me drive off. You know, then we're good. Yeah, that BMW was sweet. Dude, that BMW was so sweet. Mahogany caskets are beautiful. My problem is I really did not know how much I could afford, if I'm going to be honest. I did not know how much I could afford when it came to the casket, so I didn't want to start looking at all these high-end caskets like mahoganies and stuff like that, like a Batesville presidential or something. It's like, dude, I can't afford $12,000 in a casket. Like, I can't. You know, if I had a bunch more cash in the bank, I would have dropped $12,000 in the presidential, because I think wholesale is 12 grand on those, and no one better walk up to me and try to tell me that they're charging me full retail on a casket. I will literally call everyone I know until I find someone who will charge me wholesale. You know, don't insult me like that. I absolutely would have bought it. Absolutely would have bought it for my dad. Just simply didn't have that type of cash. And in all, I can't tell you, me personally, I don't like the presidential. It's too dark. You know, I've seen them over at the National Museum of Funeral History. You know, yay. I really like cherries. I really like bright mahoganies. And I'm all about glossy. I love glossy wooden caskets. Matte finishes are not for me. But again, this goes back to the beginning of the live stream. By the time I would have been able to have this conversation with my dad, I couldn't. And I really should have I really should have thought about that as a contingency. You know, what happens if I move away? Are you okay with me leaving you in this state forever? And my problem is I'm not. You know, I personally was not okay leaving my mom and dad in a foreign state. And if I put them in a national cemetery, I'm not going there. So then I would have to try to disinter them and send them wherever I'm going to end up. And the last show of respect really I can do for my parents is to get us a nice family plot and have space for the people in my family plot that matter to me. So, you know, my niece, my nephew, if any wife that I might obtain between now and when I die, you know, good luck with that happening. All those sort of things. Like, those are decisions that I have to make now. And absolutely, I'm at comfort with the idea that I am not leaving my parents alone in another state. Like, I just can't do it. My brother-in-law Mark, he showed up to my dad's funeral. That was a drive for him. It was good to see him. You know, if he needs a space with my sister, you know, he just needs to tell me he's there. Chandra, there's a casket called the Blacksmith is my favorite. It's nothing fancy, but it's very understated. It's very understated, classy. Yeah, and that's what I liked about this Colonial Cherry. It's like the perfect level of class. It's not, I don't want to say bargain bin. It's not inexpensive, but it's not ridiculous, and it looks like $1 million. Midwest Casket Company. Let's pull that. Let's pull that up. I want to see that. Blacksmith Casket, Midwest Casket Company. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that looks like a natural varnish finish. Yeah, this is nice. This is nice. I suppose the only thing that I would do different is Masterpiece Series. What do we got? Oh, look at that. So right here, this executive bronze, this was very similar to the stainless steel I picked out for my dad. Very, very similar to it. But the one I was looking at for him was a stainless. Look at their hardwoods. Here we go. Look at that. That's beautiful. I know that looks an awful lot like the Batesville Presidential. Again, I think this is a little bit lighter. I'd want to see this one in person. But I just think you can't go wrong with something like that. Like, shit, man. If I would have seen that, that would have been it. I would have bought this, no ifs, ands, or buts. Look at that. That's gorgeous. That's absolutely gorgeous. Then the problem becomes, if I choose something like that, folks, I have to coordinate the... let's transition over. Look at this. Look at this. That's what I was talking about. This is crazy. This is crazy nice. This is the one... I forgot that we weren't sharing the screen. This is very rustic. This is very rustic. So... I can't say that I would want that for me, but I can tell you that that's a cool product. Yeah, that's a cool casket. That's a really cool casket. YouTuber Professor Beckham. Isn't it past your bedtime? I'm going to tell your wife you're staying up and playing hooky. Like your Dr. Factor moment, I had a past student contact about a week ago and told me she decided to get a master's in emergency management because she fell in love with mass casualty in my class. Hey, there you go. There you go. I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to do a doctorate or not. I'm way too obstinate at my old age to want to play around with a doctorate. You're a staple of the CCC and bombing lectures, which is cool because, man, I love Massachusetts in a lot of ways. I miss it in a lot of ways, and I don't ever want to like go back there to live. Wonder if that's real leather. Put a little he in your haw, ma'am. Yeah, that better be real leather. I mean, I'm not gonna play any pleather crap. That'd be a waste. Matthews makes a good casket, dude. Matthews makes a good casket. Nice orthodox. You want one of those ones made by Professor Beckham. You want one of those Trappist monk caskets. I'll pull those guys up real quick. If y'all don't know about that, if you ever get the hardcore Catholic who wants like everything church-wise, Trappist caskets is your way to go. Let me tell you what. So yeah, this is what you're looking at. So one, I have actually gotten one of these for a funeral that I was doing for a client. They are not bad caskets at all, considering that they are absolutely handmade. Every piece is done by hand. There's no real machinery involved. What's the disadvantage? I don't know if you saw that price. Their best box is $5,000. So for $5,000, you can literally get something like the Colonial Cherry, or just like a little bit more than that. Probably, like I said, about maybe between $6,000 and $9,000. So this versus a Colonial Cherry. Yeah, I don't know. Not for me. Now, I can tell you the biggest pain in the butt about these caskets are they don't have beds. They have a little flap underneath that pushes the torso up a little bit. And the only way to get into the stupid thing is you have to lift the corpse, sneak your hand under. You have to push the little piece of wood on the hinge so the thing lays flat, and then the corpse will lay flat again. Absolutely a great way to throw out your back. Absolutely a great way to throw out your back. But they are very nice caskets and very well made. You're not going to see a lot of Bondo or anything on them, not by any stretch of the imagination. Let's see. Yeah, if you you know what? I don't think I showed the really nice bouquet. This is the bouquet that was sent by Pierce Mortuary Colleges. I know I talked about it and whatever. I can't remember if I put it on the screen, if the screen was being shared. This is the one that's now being dried out that I'm going to make a shadow box for. Put it with my mom's stuff. And what's really cool is all too often, you know, we always throw the same crosses in with a client family or something. If so the priest at the church is a priest by the name of Father Beppin. Father Beppin was not there when I was there. He's a recent addition to Blessed Sacrament. And he was very kind to allow me to take a quick photo right before we recessed out. So that cross is the one I used for my mom's funeral. That's the one that's going to go, that we used here on my dad's funeral. And that will likely be last used at my funeral. So I'm a real big fan about people when they get these sort of items. You may want to hold on to them, and they gain more meaning over time. Big fan of that, which is funny because all that stuff is literally sitting in the funeral home bag in my dining room right now because I put it down there once I got home and then life took over. I really need to start cleaning this rat's nest of crap in back of me. Get all my stuff on shelves. There's a couple of monasteries, Professor Beckham, that do caskets. Trappist, I think, is the closest one to Florida. I know that the cremation place we were just looking at said Iowa. I really think the Trappist monastery is in the Carolinas somewhere. I don't remember for sure. But there are monks that make just about anything. And outside of the Trappist, I'm sure there's another branch of monks that are doing stuff. I think there are some that make urns even. And, of course, there are monks that make beer. You know, thank God for that. All right, folks, this was a 2.5 hour long live stream. I am going to call time a death on this one because I'm exhausted. And literally, there's not really much more for me to talk about. So just in closing, again, everyone, thanks for stopping on by. It's always a pleasure to, catch you all on the live streams. Upcoming stuff, we now got the Discord channel. I'm going to drop that link in one more time for anyone who might want to join the Discord. Because of the fact that I am going to be doing movie nights with VR, and that's how I will announce the invites So we're going to be using something called Big Screen VR. You can get that on any VR headset. Me personally, I use a Meta Quest 2. You can pick those up pretty cheap these days, actually. And if you need like a primer on getting stuff comfortable for VR, maybe during the next live stream, I'll talk a little bit more about what I am using to stream VR. I found some really comfortable stuff on Amazon. And if you get something like a Meta Quest 2 for probably anywhere between 200, 300 bucks, you put like another 200 bucks into it, you're going to have a pretty comfortable rig, whether you want to do like virtual workouts or you want to play the Ghostbusters VR game, which is stupid good, by the way. Best 30 bucks I've spent in a while. If you're a ghost head, you're into Ghostbusters, you absolutely need to get a VR headset and get, I think it's Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed or something like that. I know there's a multiplayer one for consoles, but there's also one for VR, and that one is absolutely insane. The other thing is I will post the name of whatever movie we're going to watch. And if you are into gaming, I will likely start doing at least a one Friday a month time where I live stream what I am playing, which is almost universally Division 2. And if you ever want to join up to play games on the Xbox, my gamer tag is in the chat. Feel free to add me as a friend. If I get enough people playing Division, I'll even go ahead and create a clan on Division 2 so we can exclusively, play. For the most part, folks, I want to keep this to funeral service people. This is your way to kind of unwind and talk with other funeral service people and game with funeral service people. Not that I don't mind anyone who wants to play. It's just that we all look for our safe spaces. This is one of our safe spaces. Everyone have a wonderful night. Thanks for sharing the night with me. Thanks for listening to me talk about my dad. Hope you folks learned something that maybe you can bring back into your lives, into your classrooms. And I'll see you next time, folks. Y'all take care.